Hey everyone, hope you all are well. The first thing I'm doing today, as always, is priming the eye area. I'm adding a few swipes of the Urban Decay Eyeshadow Primer Potion and then I'm blending the product into the skin anywhere that I'll be adding eyeshadow, and this is just going to help the shadows go on nice and smoothly, blend nice and easily, and last all day long as well. So I'm busting out the Urban Decay Born to Run palette again, and I'm starting out with the shade Riff. Riff is a medium warm toned orangey brown with a matte finish, and I'm just using a Sedona Lace EB09 universal blending brush to add this colour into the crease of the eye. So I've picked up a small amount of product on my brush and I'm just using circular motions and windshield wiper motions to blend this colour into the crease. And when I get to that outer corner, I'm just rounding off the eyeshadow. I'm picking up now a little bit more eyeshadow, this time on the side of my brush, and I'm tapping the brush down on the inner and outer corners of the eye and then connecting the shadow into the crease. The brush really does live up to its name in that it can be used to blend or pack on colour onto the lid. Next then, I'm taking a small bullet-shaped brush. This one is from Vanity Planet. It's from their vegan brush set. And I'm sweeping some of that eyeshadow riff down along the lower lash line. And how far you blend it down will all depend on how smoky you want the look to appear. I usually apply the eyeshadow the width of the brush head, and that's good enough for me. Next then, I'm taking the shade Punk, which is a kind of plummy brown and it has a matte finish to it. Now I actually made a mistake here and I thought that it was lighter and warmer than it actually is, but it's okay, I can make it work. Basically, I've picked up some of this shadow on the double-ended brush that came with the Naked Cherry palette, and I'm using the small dense end to pat this shadow to the inner and outer corner of the eyes. I'm pulling it up into the crease, and then I'm flipping my brush around now and using the fluffy tapered side to fade the shadow into the crease. Now, my issue here is that there's too much of a stark contrast between the Riff and Punk shade. They just don't blend well together. And listen, it would just take an age to try and rectify that. And I think this really highlights then the importance of building up your colours from light to dark. It does really just make that blending process so much easier and it gives you a professional finish to your makeup look. So as I said, all is not lost. I've faded out that brown as much as I can. And the next thing that I'm going to do is to go back in with that Riff eyeshadow. I'm just reapplying it because naturally with blending the brown, I would have lost some of the intensity of that shade. But as well as layering now the Riff shade over the brown, it's just going to fade it and it's going to help the two eyeshadows to fuse together a bit better. So what I then like to do is to go in with a clean blending brush. This is no product on it whatsoever, and I'm just really lightly buffing over the edges of the entire look just to make sure they are nice and soft and blended. What I should have done first, I'm going to do now, and that's take the shade next to Riff called Good Is Gone. This is a deep warm brown with a semi-matte finish to it. It has a soft texture and a slight amount of shimmer, but I'm using this to build up some depth. So I picked this up with my double-ended brush that came with the Ultraviolet palette, and I'm using the dense end to pack that colour onto the inner and outer half of the eye, and then I'm pulling the colour across to join in the crease. Once I'm happy then with how that looks, I'm happy with my placement, I'm flipping the brush around and I'm using the tapered blending end of it just to buff and blend out that eyeshadow, and I do think that this shadow initially pairs much better with that Riff shade. As I've mentioned, I build up the shadow in light layers until I achieve the level of intensity that I desire. So I'm going back in now with a little more of that shade Good Is Gone, and I'm just repeating the process. So with blending, I've covered up a little of that Riff shade on the lid, so I'm just going to reapply a little more now. I'm just tapping it down on the inner and outer portion of the eye, just to make sure that it's still visible. Next then, I'm blending that Good Is Gone eyeshadow all the way down along the lower lash line. So now moving back to that shade Punk, and it's naturally deeper than the brown that I've used previously, so now is a good time to bust that out. So again, I'm just popping a little of this down on the inner corner, followed by the outer corner, and then I'm connecting the shadow across into the deepest part of the crease. And once I'm satisfied with that then, I'm flipping the brush around and I'm getting to work on blending the shadow out. And I'm literally then just repeating the process, so you all know the drill by now. But I feel that if you're not confident, just work in really light layers, build up your shadows little by little, and you can't go wrong. And even if you do, it's much easier to fix because you've got less product to work with. What I've done to the top, I'm doing to the bottom now, so I'm just blending that punk eyeshadow down all the way along the lower lash line right into the inner corner and making sure to connect it up on that outer edge. So the next shadow I'm taking is called Smog, and this is a gorgeous warm golden bronze shade with a metallic finish. It's soft and creamy and it's really pigmented. So I'm just adding this to the centre of the lid in a bid to achieve a nice soft spotlight effect. And if you do want those shimmery particles to be a bit more apparent, you can of course go in with a spritz of a setting spray or some water to the brush before you apply it. Finally then, I'm taking the shade Jet, and this is the final shadow that I'm using to add some depth because as you can see, it's the darkest. Jet is a lovely dark black with a satin finish to it, and because it's a satin, I think it's a little easier to blend. I know matte black can be quite hard to work with, and again, this one actually isn't jet black like its name, it's a bit lighter, so I just find as well that makes it just that bit easier to work with if you're not very comfortable with applying and blending black. So I've just added this to the very outer and the very inner corner and then the deepest part of the crease and then faded it out with the blending brush. I've switched back now to an angled brush and I'm using this to line along the upper lash line. I'm using this to add a bit of definition there. It's going to make the lashes appear a bit thicker. So it's a good step to take if you aren't wearing false lashes, and if you are, it's going to hide the band of the lashes that you apply as well. And I'm just adding it down to the lower lash line too. For a liner then, I'm taking the 24/7 Glide On Eye Pencil in the shade Smog to match the lid colour, and I'm just running this inside the eye and it gives a subtle amount of sparkle there too. So I've applied the eye lower bauble lashes, which I'm really loving lately. They're nice and thick and black. They're defined without being too overpowering. They don't cover up the look that you've just created. They just complement it nicely. And then I'm using the Lash Freak mascara to blend my own lashes in with the false ones. But then that's it. So I hope you enjoyed the tutorial and found it easy to follow. If you did, please let me know and I will catch you all in a video really soon.